Jerry Mad Dog Shriver was indeed a man who knew no fear. He was the one who instilled it. Roaming the jungles of Vietnam and Cambodia, he and his group of loyal soldiers hunted down the Viet Cong wherever they could find them. They attacked whether the enemy was alone or in platoons. It didn't matter. They would get as close as possible to the enemy and strike hard, the hardest they could. It was the only way Jerry Shriver knew how to wage war, violently and to the bitter end. The story of Senior Sergeant Jerry Michael Tate Shriver is quite an unusual one. There's very little information about him before his military career, almost as if he was born on the day he enlisted in the Army. However, we do know that he was born on September 24, 1941, in the small town of Defuniak Springs, Florida, into a family of 7. Jerry's parents, Dale Leroy and Dorothy Madeline, had 4 other children, 2 girls and 2 boys. Dale also served in the Army with deployments in Korea and the Philippines. He had a significant influence on Jerry and encouraged him to join the military. At the age of 22, Jerry enlisted in the Army in Sacramento, California, where the Shriver family was living at the time. After completing basic training, Jerry applied to become a paratrooper. He finished airborne school and joined the legendary 101st Airborne Division. However, his service as a paratrooper didn't last long, as he soon moved to the 7th Army's Long Range Patrol Company, a small, well-armed reconnaissance team trained to patrol deep in enemy-held territory. This role, as it turned out, perfectly suited Jerry Shriver's personality. As a member of the Long Range Patrol Company, Jerry was deployed to West Germany, where he patrolled the border with East Germany. In the mid-60s, tensions between NATO and the Warsaw Pact were high, and the border between the two Germanys was the first line of potential conflict. However, at the same time, the U.S. was entering a war on the opposite side of the globe. A war that would change its history and the life of young Sergeant Jerry Shriver. Before being sent to Vietnam, Jerry spent a brief time in Taiwan, where he commanded a patrol unit. In 1966, he arrived in South Vietnam and began working under the command of the Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group, MACV-SOG. The notorious MACV-SOG was the top-secret special operations unit engaged in unconventional warfare operations behind enemy lines, including reconnaissance, sabotage, rescue operations, and various other tasks unsuitable for conventional forces. In this force, Jerry Shriver belonged to a unit tasked with probing enemy lines and capturing or killing anyone they encountered. They were often called the Hatchet Force, composed of U.S. Army Special Forces and indigenous personnel, often Montagnards, Hmong, and other ethnic minorities. Apart from showing extraordinary courage in combat, these local fighters possessed invaluable knowledge of the terrain, local customs, and languages, which allowed the patrol units to navigate the jungle with ease. It didn't take long after his arrival in Vietnam for Jerry to demonstrate his capabilities. On October 8, 1966, Shriver led a patrol of Montagnards through the jungle when he heard enemy fire in the distance. Despite knowing nothing about the size of the enemy force, he decided to follow their trail. Soon, his unit discovered a small Viet Cong force and opened fire. The enemy dispersed, leaving 1 injured soldier behind. Recognizing the opportunity to capture an enemy who could provide valuable information, Jerry started running after him. He reached the enemy soldier and captured him using only his hands. With a valuable prisoner in his grasp, Jerry led his team toward the landing zone. Unfortunately, they encountered 2 large VC forces. Sensing his comrades nearby, the prisoner broke free and started running toward them. Once again, Jerry gave chase, trying to reach the prisoner before he could reveal his team's position. This time, the prisoner was faster than Jerry, but not faster than a round from Jerry's submachine gun. The prisoner was killed, but the danger from the enemy force remained. Jerry quickly returned to his men and organized them into defensive positions. It was the right call, as the VC soon arrived and surrounded them. With precise and disciplined fire, Jerry and his Montagnards repelled attacks from the more numerous enemy until friendly gunships arrived and dispersed the VC. In this action, Jerry not only showed how far he was ready to go in fulfilling his mission, but that he would fight to the very end with his men. Less than 3 weeks later, Jerry found himself in another perilous situation. While patrolling through dense jungle terrain, Shriver's 4-man special operations team was ambushed by a larger Viet Cong force. They managed to repel the assault and swiftly fell back into a defensive perimeter. Once the firing stopped, Jerry decided to move toward the spot where they had engaged the enemy to look for dead enemy bodies, hoping to gather valuable intelligence. Unfortunately, he found only one body, which had already been stripped of all its belongings. Upon returning to his team, Jerry tried to call for an evacuation, but the radio was not making contact. To make matters worse, the enemy returned and surrounded them. Jerry responded by directing heavy fire, repelling one enemy attack after another. Finally, making contact, Jerry called in airstrikes to facilitate their evacuation. Given the challenging terrain and intense fire, helicopters could only lift one man at a time. Shriver chose to stay on the ground, covering the evacuation with precise fire against concentrated enemy attacks. He fought fearlessly until all his men were safely aboard the helicopters. For the bravery shown that day, Sergeant Jerry Shriver was awarded the Silver Star. Months passed, and Jerry Shriver soon became a legend among the SOG troops. He especially gained fame for one of his radio transmissions when his men got surrounded yet again. Instead of calling for evacuation, he radioed, "I've got him right where I want him, surrounded from the inside." One time, his life was really hanging by a thread. On October 23, 1967, Shriver led a reconnaissance team into Cambodia, heading to the Fishhook area. After being resupplied, his platoon was spotted by a small hostile force. Shriver tried to entice them to approach so he could attempt to capture a prisoner, but another enemy soldier identified the reconnaissance party. Shriver fired to set off an alarm, and his team joined in. The group tried to break contact with the enemy, which turned out to be a platoon-sized force. Jerry ordered his men to withdraw while throwing grenades to confuse the enemy and prevent them from pinpointing their location. Unfortunately, they were soon trapped against a large lake and surrounded on 3 sides. Shriver informed the forward air controllers about their dire situation, reporting that they were in contact with an enemy platoon that could soon be reinforced by more Viet Cong. 2 USAF gunships were dispatched to help. Shriver directed their rockets and minigun fire at the enemy, who were only 30 meters away. As the situation worsened, he moved the supporting fire even closer, within 20 meters, until the enemy began to retreat. Jerry Shriver was truly a man who rushed into combat and knew no fear. Whenever his team was on a break, he would join another one preparing for a mission, eager to stay in action and hunt the enemy. However, he was far from being the mad dog that the Viet Cong named him after setting a $10,000 bounty on his head. He was a warrior in the truest sense, fighting alongside his brothers in arms to the last drop of his blood and sharing both joys and sorrows with them. Jerry cared deeply for his Montagnards. He ate with them, drank with them, and lived in their huts. He spent all the money he earned on buying things for their families. Jerry didn't care about their background or the color of their skin. They were his trusted soldiers whom he could rely on with his very life. And the Montagnards trusted him completely, ready to follow him straight into death. Many fellow soldiers never understood Jerry Shriver's behavior, often finding him eccentric. In camp, he would walk around wearing a blue velvet smoking jacket and derby hat, carrying up to 6 pistols. He was particularly picky about his weapons, never carrying long-barrel firearms in combat. Instead, he preferred his sawed-off shotgun, suppressed M3 grease gun, or a Thompson along with satchels of hand grenades, and he liked to engage the enemy in close counters. In camp, Jerry was always accompanied by his dog, a German shepherd named Klaus. The dog was perhaps someone he cared about most. On one occasion, while Jerry was away on a mission, a group of NCOs force-fed Klaus with beer, causing the dog to get sick and defecate on the floor. The drunk NCOs then rubbed the dog's nose in the feces and kicked him out of the club. When Jerry returned and found out what had happened, he went straight to the club. He took a beer, put one of his pistols on the table, took off his pants, and defecated in front of everyone. He sat down, grabbed his beer, and said, "If you want to rub my nose in this, come on over." No one said a word. They feared him as much as the VC did. Jerry Shriver fully embraced his role in Vietnam. It became his life. He served 2 consecutive tours and applied for a 3rd. When friends advised him to call it a day and go home, he responded that he would like to but didn't know how, as if he couldn't quit on his montagnards. In the spring of 1968, Jerry was forced to take rest and recuperation in the United States. However, instead of resting, he spent time with one of his rare buddies, Green Beret Larry White, visiting gun stores. Jerry was looking to buy a Marlin lever-action rifle chambered in the extremely powerful .444 Marlin cartridge. He shipped one to his unit in Vietnam, where he used it, as he liked to joke, to bust bunkers. After his R&R was over, Jerry returned to Vietnam and resumed his usual activities. However, he looked different. It seemed as if the war had taken a toll on him. He confided to his friends that he felt his luck had run out and that death was coming for him. Despite this ominous feeling, Jerry continued to survive, moving from one mission to another, hunting VCs deep in the jungle. On April 24, 1969, Jerry's Raider unit was tasked with locating and destroying the secret lair of the Central Office of South Vietnam, a mobile North Vietnamese political and military headquarters. As he climbed into the helicopter, Jerry turned to his friend and told him to take care of his dog. As soon as they landed in the designated zone, both platoons were subjected to fierce enemy machine gun fire. The landing zone was surrounded by heavily reinforced concrete bunkers, from which the VCs sprayed a rain of bullets across the field. With both platoons pinned down, there was no way to move unless someone dealt with machine guns. By someone, everyone meant Jerry and his men. Jerry picked 5 of his montagnards and radioed the other platoon's commander, informing him that he was going to try to flank the bunkers. The men loaded their weapons, jumped from their positions, and stormed through the rain of bullets toward the enemy machine gunners. Within seconds, they dashed into the tree line, straight into the enemy lair. This was the last time anyone saw Jerry Shriver. It was only 3 weeks before the end of his 3rd and probably last tour in Vietnam. 5 years later, Secretary of the Army gave Shriver a presumptive finding of death. Jerry was declared dead, even though his body was never found. The spirit of the fiercest warrior Vietnam had seen, however, continued to live among his comrades. In the camp's club, they hung his blue smoking jacket with the inscription below it, in memory of Sergeant First Class Jerry M. Shriver, missing in action 24 April 1969. Thank you for watching this episode. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more content. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our next drop in the comment. Stay tuned.